Morning.
Well, we just starting recording the meeting now.
Thank you.
All right.
All good, please.
Yes, yeah.
I'll sit by Claire with it rather than the pillow, I think.
I know. I'm picking up Paul's side.
Okay, board up
That's my side of my face.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this multi-location meeting of the Culture Connection and Place Scrutiny Committee. It's 10 AM on Friday, the 23rd of January 2026. And Councillor Sean Percy, I'm chairing the meeting this morning. The meeting will be recorded and live streamed as well today. This is the first of our Scrutiny Committee that is live streamed. So just be aware of that, please, members. As usual, can we make sure our phones are on silent during the meeting? And for those who are online, could you make sure your cameras are switched on and your microphones are on mute, please? That would be great. Just do my phone. For those in the room, just raise your hand if you wish to indicate to speak. We haven't got any members in the room, just officers, and Tom's going to run through those in a moment. For those online, please raise your electronic hand to indicate if you need to speak. So I'm just going to ask Tom now just to read out who's in the room with us today.
Thank you, Chair. So I just start with the officers. So we have with us today Nicola Pierce, Director. We also have Anna Harvard, Lisa Willis. We've got Paul Hinder, Claire Davis, Chris Lunders, and also Andrew Collins, and myself, Thomas.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Tom. So there's, I believe, a small error on the agenda. We just need to draw members' attention to in terms of the page numbering.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So having a bit of a problem with ModGov at the moment, as usual. So there's a bit of a correction on the page numbering. So just to make you aware, on the library's annual report, it gives the page numbers as 29 to 76, but that should actually be 39 to 76. And also it has omitted the page numbering for the corporate strategy 6 monthly performance monitoring. So the page numbers for that for everyone is 225 to 406.
Brilliant, thank you, Tom. And then one last thing from me is we are changing the agenda order slightly this morning to accommodate the consultant for the regeneration and economic development strategy. So we'll be taking item 4B first, and then we'll move on to item 4A afterwards. So I will just move on now to declarations of interest on agenda item 2. Members, if you have any declarations, can you please indicate now? I'm going to make a declaration just as a trustee of a community library, just in relation to the library's annual report. There's a brief mention, passing mention made to community libraries. So just to cover that off. Do we have any other declarations from members?
I think Councillor Rice.
Councillor Rice, Gareth?
Yep, sorry, I couldn't put my hand down. Yeah, I'm also trustee of the Britain Ferry Resource Centre, which is the Britain Ferry Library.
Brilliant, thank you, Gareth. Okay, so I'll move us on now to agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meetings. They're on page 5 to 38 of our agenda pack. There's quite a few pages of minutes there. So I just need a proposal and a second that they're a true and accurate record. Please, members. Councillor Bob Wolford, thank you. And a seconder.
Jordan.
And Councillor Dave Whitelock, I can see it. Brilliant. Okay, members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, I'll take it these minutes are approved.
See no indications to the contrary, Chair, therefore those minutes are approved as accurate.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So I'll now take us on to our first agenda item, which is 4B, the Regeneration Economic Development Strategy. That's on pages 77 to 150. We've got Andrew Collins here with us in the room. We've got Nicola Pierce and Ross Gill, I believe, the consultants online on Teams. So who is started, Nicola?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As the Chair has indicated, we've got Ross Gill in the meeting online. Ross has prepared this Regeneration Economic Development Strategy with us. We did present a draft report to Scrutiny some weeks ago, and we've been engaging with stakeholders through this process, and we've been securing sort of comments and suggestions throughout that process so that we can include within the final draft version, which will then be going to Cabinet on the 4th of February. As I've indicated, Ross is online, and I think he's just going to take members through a very short presentation to identify, the missions included within the strategy and the amendments that have been made as a consequence of the comments that we've captured through the consultation process. So I'm hoping that Ross can take over from here, and obviously we'll take any questions at the end of the presentation. So over to you, Ross.
Okay, thanks very much, Nicola, and good morning, everybody, and thanks very much for moving the item to accommodate me. Really appreciate that. I'll just share my screen, if it will let me. Yep. And as Nicola said, I'm just going to just run through a very short set of slides. I won't go through the strategy as a whole because, of course, you've already seen the draft of it and indeed commented on it. So I won't go through all of that. But this is really just to highlight some of the changes that we've made and some of the feedback that we've had. So just to start off with a bit of a quick recap on the draft strategy, which of course you've seen, but just to put it into context, we start off with a narrative around the spatial context for the county borough, a fresh view of the state of the local economy, and then a view of some of the big opportunities within Neath Talbot, which of course are very distinctive. But we've then set out a vision for the next 10 years, which we've described as set out there as a leading centre for low carbon innovation and industry within a sustainable and diverse local economy in which opportunities are widespread, accessible and fair. Quite a broad vision, but hopefully will enable you to capture a number of activities within that. We've then set out what we've called a series of strategic ambitions, the first being around a leading centre for low carbon production innovation, the second around ensuring a just transition, the third around a network of distinctive and thriving communities. Hopefully, in the way that we've defined those, we've made them specific to Neath Talbot, and we've tried to do that. So it can be quite conventional to have a strategy which has, a chapter on skills, a chapter on place, a chapter on business or whatever. We've tried to sort of change that a little bit to make it a bit more specific to the opportunities and challenges that Neath Talbot faces, and then that works through into the route forward into action. We shared we produced the draft strategy at the end of October, start of November. It's been to a number of different forums since then, so we've been gathering comments as we go, and I think you've seen a copy of the comments log that we've been preparing as we've gone along. We've then translated that into a revised draft, which you've seen, and I'll just run through some of the changes that have been made to that. The first big area of change, I suppose, or the first big area of comments, was around rebalancing the spatial narrative. I guess some specific challenges for Neath Talbot in that regard, given the diversity of the county borough, the fact that the coastal corridor is very distinct, the valleys are distinct, and within those areas there are distinct places as well. So getting that right is important. One of the key comments that came back was the need for a strong focus on the valleys and for that to be sort of balanced better, if you like, with the opportunities in the coastal corridor, not least given the origin of the production of this strategy in what I think was talked about as being a valleys and villages strategy right at the start. We've tried to rebalance that a bit with some additional context in the spatial narrative chapter, which is chapter 2. We've broadened some of the references to key projects across the county borough throughout the document. There was also a set of comments about rebalancing the sort of big opportunities in Neath in Talbot in particular, with priorities in Neath, Britton Ferry and some of the other towns. We've reworked a bit of the narrative in the introduction and updated the spatial narrative somewhat. having said that, one of the comments that we had from cabinet members on Wednesday, and I think reflected in the comments that you've put forward as well, is that we possibly haven't quite got that right yet. And there was a view from cabinet that we ought to make some further references, especially to Britain Ferry and Skewen, as well as Neath and Talbot specifically. So we need to rework that a little bit for the next version. The second area of change was around how we just bring it to life a bit. Clearly, the strategy needs to have multiple audiences. So one is, I guess, internal to the council. There's one which is to government in terms of making the case for funding and so on. There's another one to the private sector. There's also one to the community locally, and obviously it'd be a public-facing document. There was a view that there ought to be some case studies, some examples of businesses and things that have happened. So we've added in a new business case study section. The businesses that are quoted there are all ones that have been quoted before, if you like, because they're case studies that have been provided to the council previously, but we've built some of those in. And we've also tried to say a bit more about the track record of the council in delivery over the years and highlighting some of those key projects that have been taken forward. The third area of change is around specifically in relation to the 3 strategic ambitions that we've set out and where they might be strengthened. We've reworked the skills chapter a little bit to strengthen some of the narrative in that, especially in respect of especially in respect to progression to university, opportunities for higher skills and so on. And we've also added in a section in there which talks about the relationship between workforce development and housing supply, recognising that housing is a key component of retaining a skilled workforce and attracting more. We've tried to expand the focus a little bit on the foundational economy. And then the third area that really featured in some of the comments was around just reinforcing the need for the council to be proactive in terms of its engagement with the UK government and the Welsh government, especially in respect of some of the major strategic sites. And I guess that plays into that strengthened narrative about the track record of the council that we talked about earlier. And then the final section is about moving towards delivery. I guess what we have with the strategy is a document which sets out some strategic ambitions, which sets out an overall narrative, which hopefully will be relevant for the next few years and won't get out of date as a result of a particular new investment coming forward or a particular challenge emerging. But of course, those things will happen, and there will be projects that need to be delivered along the way. So while the strategy in and of itself doesn't set out an action plan, because I think probably if we did, it would get out of date very quickly, there clearly needs to be that sort of document sitting alongside it. So we've set out a commitment within the revised draft to what's referred to as a regeneration and economic development performance plan, which will outline how those strategic ambitions will be delivered, what activity is currently happening, and that can be kept live over time, and that's going to be worked on over the next several weeks. So that's a very quick summary of what changes have been made to the document so far. I know you've put forward various comments and suggestions as well, and there's clearly time to incorporate those along with the comments that cabinet members made on Wednesday, which we can do in time for the next iteration to go to cabinet for next week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation there, Ross. Nicola or Andrew, got anything to add before I go to members' questions?
No, I think Ross has covered it pretty well. I know that there are a number of questions that we've had in advance of the meeting today, and I understand that Councillor Goldup-John is unable to make it, and he submitted some questions. So we're more than happy to answer those when you're ready. Yeah.
There we are, brilliant. I'll just make a start in terms of tracking the changes and to the document and the feedback that's been given. That's been really welcome to see that, actually. The only thing that I wanted to flag is way back when we did do a workshop session in Scrutiny at the very early stage of the development of this document. And I think if there was any valuable feedback and input from that session that has fed into the plan, it would be really useful for us have some record or acknowledgement of that, and that's just from ours with my scrutiny hat on. There may not have been, but I just want to flag that up. So if there is a, from the consultant side or our side, if we have a log of that, that would be really useful, just to either include with the final document or something can be passed on to us. So other than that, from me, I'm just going to go over to members for questions, and I'm going to start with Councillor Gareth Rice. Gareth?
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Thank you, Chair. Right, what is that? I'm commenting on the draft that we've seen in our pack. I have not seen the that revised draft which you just brought out. And I don't know if we should jump ahead of the agenda, but a lot of the points I'm going to raise here cross between this strategy and the next agenda item I've applied in place. So rather than repeat myself, I'll just sort of get it all out in one go here, but the observations do relate to both, if that's okay. And I did have a bit of a rant at pre-brief over little mention of Britain Ferry in the documents. It's pleasing to see that they've just mentioned that the feedback from Cabinet is going to put more focus on Britain Ferry. However, that was not mentioned as such in the original document. Without giving too much of a history lesson, I'm sure you're all aware that the rich industrial past, which Britain Ferry once was, a bit of a powerhouse really, contributed significantly towards the story and success of the industrial Neath Talbot and the wider South Wales area. But I do have to share as much as I can as elected member the constant reminders I get from the residents where they feel strongly Britain Ferry has been dealt a very rough deal ever since the 96 amalgamation of creating Neath Talbot Council. Being sandwiched between Neath and Talbot, many say we are, well, pretty much the forgotten town, with most of the major investment going into either Neath or Talbot, and more recently now Pontardawe in the valleys, with very little being invested in Britain Ferry itself. I mean, this is pretty evident if anyone who drives through Britain Ferry, I doubt many would stop to get out to go for a walk. It's not very inviting. And seeing just how run down it has become, it's clear it's desperate for investment and growth and needs a major kiss of life, really, if I'm honest. I did mention, to sort of give Sean a heads up as well, I did mention pre-brief Sean's recent interview on TV with Vanish Wales, where he spoke passionately about the old Aberafan and what has now become, struck a chord to me really, as it felt like it has echoes of Britain Ferry, how busy it used to be, how vibrant it used to be, and you could argue really that Britain Ferry was bigger and busier than Aberafan. However, Aberafan did see major investment and underwent huge change to what it is today, with the indoor shopping centre, the civic centre, the theatre, and everything else, and applaud that, and good for you for Aberafan. But on the flip side, Britain Ferry has lacked any major investment towards the growth of the town and been rather neglected and ignored over the years, resulting in the deprived and very tired state we see Britain Ferry today. I will mention it's quite ironic that the front cover, the picture on the front cover of the document is titled Neath Talbot Regeneration and Economic Delivery Strategy and features Britain Ferry in that picture, which includes the historic yet somewhat neglected Brunel Dock. It feels like I'm nose rubbed in it a bit. I did say that before. It's so much can be done there, and it's been neglected for such a long time. That document, Britain Ferry is only mentioned briefly 4 times. The first is on page 5 of the document, which just tells us that Britain Ferry is located in the coastal corridor, just tells us where it's located. The next 2 mentions are both on page 19 of the document, which is page 109 of our agenda. It states there that there is some significant concentrations of deprivation in the county borough, and Britain Ferry is included in the 10% most deprived neighbourhoods nationally. And then on the opposite column of that page, it goes on to say that economic inactivity through long-term ill health or disability is especially high in Britain Ferry, along with a couple of other parts of the borough. So that's two mentions of the poor areas of Neath Talbot being Britain Ferry. The final mention is on page 42 of the document, page 132 of our agenda pack, where it does offer a glimmer of hope, as it does say that Britain Ferry is one of 6 centres to receive a local place plan. However, there's no further mention or any detail of any such place plan. I'm glad you mentioned the feedback log, that is also included. And on page 142 of the agenda pack, which is the feedback log, point 020, which was just alluded to by Ross Gill there is mention of, says the document has a strong focus on opportunities linked to Talbot at the expense of those in places, for example, Britain Ferry. So again, it's been recognised that there is little focus on Britain Ferry, and the proposed action suggests a rebalance within the narrative and bring out further reference to specific local challenges and opportunities. Then the action column states it has been rebalanced slightly in introduction on page 3 and the spatial narrative on page 5, which was just alluded to by Ross. However, on page 3, there's no mention of Britain Ferry whatsoever. And page 5, as I mentioned just now, is purely a reference that Britain Ferry lies within the coastal corridor, and that's as far as it goes. So personally, I fail to see where or how this is addressed or achieved the rebalance of specific local opportunities within Britain Ferry. And maybe just a footnote, and obviously I've got to sort of represent the Britain Ferry residents and make sure they feel included rather than just they feel included rather than just just a footnote mention. And it's quite worrying that the focus will continue to be aimed towards other areas at our expense. The document states it's a strategic ambition number 3. It's a network of distinctive and thriving communities and seeks to invest in the quality of Neath Talbot's town centres and smaller communities. With this in mind, and whilst acknowledging within the document that there is little focus on Britain Ferry at the expense of other towns, I suppose to try and get some kind of question really would be, to what extent are you intending to fulfil that ambition by including Britain Ferry, as well as other communities that have received little or no mention whatsoever, for argument's sake, like you just said, Scrutiny. And when will then place plans be made available to the public, and what funds have been identified to deliver any such plan? Sorry, it's quite lengthy points raised there, but I am very passionate about my area, as I'm sure we all are, and I just feel I will keep banging the drum for Britain Ferry as often as I can. So thank you for the opportunity there. And again, a lot of them points, rather than raise it again in the pride and place in the next agenda item, I'll put them all out there in one place. So thank you, Sean.
Well, thank you, Gareth. I mean, no need to apologise for speaking passionately about your community and about your ward. You know, there's a lot of points there, some of which have been picked up by feedback from officers and cabinet members as well. So I'm going to go to Nicola Pierce first, just to respond to some of the points and your questions.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Rice. And we do acknowledge that we were trying to balance out the coastal corridor and the settlements around the coastal corridor and the economic development opportunities that are evident there with the the additional opportunities within the valleys communities. And what we can't do is possibly focus on in-depth projects within the strategy document itself. It just lays out the ambition that we've got to rebalance economic development across the whole of the county borough, so no area is left out. The delivery plan that Ross referred to earlier on, which will follow on and will be an iterative document, will actually identify what projects we're able to pursue to actually realise the ambition within the strategy, and that will be specific in relation to particular projects and particular places. So that's where the detail that perhaps you're looking for will come in time. You know, we do acknowledge that Britain Ferry does have high levels of deprivation, and I'm not going to write in place report now, because if we stick to the regeneration economic development strategy at present, that the other item will follow shortly. But we do acknowledge the importance of Britain Ferry, the levels of deprivation and the opportunity. As officers, we've already started working with partner organisations such as the RSLs, and my team have been working with the housing strategy team, and we will start engaging with skills and employability soon to find out whether we can start master planning in Britain Ferry to ensure we're addressing the problems that we've got evident within that area, so that the as I say, the issues that we've identified are not going to go unaddressed. I don't know if that's a word actually, but we're trying to identify what opportunities that we can implement by pulling together our regeneration ambitions across different partnerships and trying to pull that together to actually deliver change within that area. So it's we've only had a couple of meetings, very early meetings with those partner organisations, but we hope to build on successes that have taken place elsewhere in Wales, see if they're transferable to Neath Talbot generally, and we potentially do that little pilot study within Britain Ferry. But this is very early doors, and we haven't actually progressed too far yet, but it is an ambition of ours to try and deliver something in Britain Ferry. But the actual delivery plan that I referred to will contain the detail that you are possibly looking for. The strategy is a high level document. Place plans, there are 6 place plans that we were restricted to by Welsh Government. And they've previously been identified, and Welsh Government was able to fund the delivery of those place plans. Concerns were raised previously about the fact that some settlements sort of skewing was not included. So we have been progressing discussions with Welsh Government on including skewing, and we are waiting for a formal response on that. But Britain Ferry is identified as a place plan area. Work has started, and perhaps Andrew can update you on where we are in that, in terms of progressing with that. But once we get a place plan in place, it'll allow us access to Transforming Towns funding from Welsh Government, as well as placemaking grants. So the funding will follow to enable us to deliver change in the area once those place plans are in place. So Andrew, if you can sort of update on where we are in that process, and hopefully that will give you some comfort that we are focusing on Britain Ferry as well as other areas throughout the county borough.
So the 3 towns of Neath, Talbot and Britain Ferry are more advanced in terms of place plans. They are constantly evolving documents, so we're getting feedback all the time from various stakeholders and from officers. So we presented them before SLT, before Christmas, and it was felt that they needed to be reinforced with past examples of placemaking grants. So that's work that the urbanists are doing at the moment. The intention is that we'll be presenting them to members towards the end of February, with a view then for SLT to adopt them on the 18th of March, Cabinet Members briefing on the 1st of April. As Nicola has said, that will then enable those 3 settlements to access placemaking grant. The Welsh Government have just announced a further £6 million of placemaking grant for the South West Wales, which will take us up to the end of 2027. So they will involve projects up to the value of £300,000 each, but that still doesn't prohibit us from going for what we call strategic placemaking projects. So we could exceed 300,000 if we feel that there is a worthwhile project that the Welsh Government are willing to support. So hopefully from April we'll get the place plan signed off, and then we can start accessing that funding from the Welsh Government. With regards to the other three towns, Neath, Britton Ferry and Ystalyfera, we are holding workshops, councillor, coming up in February/March with the members and other stakeholders. So we will then be progressing those town centres following on from the adoption of Neath, Pontardawe and Port Talbot.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Gareth, did you want to respond to those comments, please?
Yeah, briefly for me. Yeah, thanks, Nicola and Andrew for the feedback there. It is obviously long overdue, much needed, and we welcome any sort of investment in Britton Ferry and other areas, of course, but predominantly I'm looking after Britton Ferry on this occasion. I look forward to seeing the delivery plan and the place plans, and I just hope and pray that it's more than just a document that looks pretty on a shelf, and we actually deliver much needed investment in Britton Ferry. So I will try my best to keep Britton Ferry in the spotlight as much as I can. So thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Gareth. That's absolutely your role, isn't it, as local member? I'm going to bring in Councillor Harry Clark with a question. I can see Parliament member Councillor Hurley's got his hand up. I'll bring you in a little bit later in the discussion, if that's okay, Jeremy. Helen?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, following on from what Gareth said, I mean, Sgurn is mentioned once in passing. It's one of the biggest settlements in Neath, Talbot, and there's no place plan. There's no ambition for Sgurn whatsoever. It's not even mentioned. So I really would like to know why we've been excluded from this plan, really.
I think the strategy is a high level document, and what we can't do is name check every village, every town, every settlement, and every district. We're trying to lay out our strategic ambition with the missions, and the delivery plan, as I said earlier on to Councillor Rice's questions, that's where the detail will be, where we can make those interventions in terms of delivery of projects and investment in the communities. So it's not just because a settlement or a town or a village isn't mentioned more than 2, 3, 4 times, it doesn't make it less important in terms of our overall ambition to deliver the strategy. So in response to your question, then, please don't be worried that we haven't got multiple mentions of individual areas. It's not going to dilute, it won't dilute the importance of delivering economic development and regeneration across the whole of the county borough, because that is our ambition. So, as Ross indicated earlier on, we didn't want to go into a rabbit hole of saying this is what we're going to do in this town, that town, and the other. It is a high-level strategy document, which will hopefully support all of the county borough. And as I say, the delivery plan will perhaps go into the detail as and when we start implementing the strategy. I'm hoping that's reassured you, Councillor Kerry Clark.
I think there was a point around the place plans as well, perhaps, and Sgurn.
Yeah, we as I said in the previous sort of response to Councillor Rice, we were only able to identify 6 place plan areas, and that was based on the hierarchy of settlements. So there is a hierarchy of settlements dependent upon a number of factors, and I can't think off the top of my head what they are, but they are referenced in the local development plan as well. We've indicated to Welsh Government the importance of possibly having a 7th place plan for Sgurn, so that we can access the funding that Welsh Government make available for areas with place plans. They've indicated to us that whilst they won't be prepared to pay for the place plan, if we pay for the place plan ourselves and develop it, then they're happy that that can then be eligible for Transforming Towns funding and for placemaking grants. So that's what we are doing. We are still working with Welsh Government to have that confirmed in writing, but that is our ambition in relation to place plans.
Okay, thank you. That covered it, Andrew.
Yeah, just briefly give you a bit of background. We put forward 12 settlements originally, which included areas like Sgwyn and Talbot and Gwencae Gerwyn. As Nicola said earlier, the Welsh Government came back and said we could only have 6. So we included Neath, Talbot and Pontardawe as 3 of the main commercial centres. And then for a geographic spread, we included Neath and Ystlyfera to bring in the valleys. We've put forward the case to the Welsh Government for a place plan for Sgwyn. They've accepted our argument in principle, and they're happy for us to add it on to the 6. As Nicola said, they originally said they wouldn't fund it, so we may have to fund that ourselves. However, we're coming up to the end of the financial year, and you've often found with the Welsh Government there's some slippage in revenue budget. So we have gone back to them and asked them once more if they will fund that place plan. But if they don't, then it's something we'll have to fund ourselves. But they've said in principle they're happy to support it, and they will recognise it as an area eligible for placemaking grant going forward.
Thank you. Do you want to come back on that, Helen? Oh, great, thank you. I'm going to bring in current member Councillor Hurley now. Thanks for waiting there, Jeremy.
Thanks, Chair. No, it's only an additional thing in that obviously if we want Ferry recognised as well, in that there is an area linked to the Freeport within Ferry Wharf, and that was one of the company there was one of the first to, and it was, I think, a considerable amount. I won't mention because I don't know whether it was in private. A considerable amount of investment that was the seed capital of the Freeport, so it was put there. Also, that factory unit has had planning permission as well, so, and that's going to be an advanced composite manufacturing unit built on the wharf in Britain Ferry. The other addition for the report is perhaps we are missing a trick with the wharf access within Britain Ferry and also Sgwyn, and I know there are some issues with the depth of channel at the moment, but it should be considered and perhaps added in that it will be a great support secondary area for the Freeport operations if and when, not if, but when they start. So that perhaps might be an addition of mentioning Ferry and Sgwyn for those options of river access. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Actually, we had a small discussion on that in pre-briefing in terms of some of the strategic importance of Britain Ferry as well. So I'm glad you've picked that up also. Did you want to add on that, Nicola? I could see you.
No.
Great. Okay. I had some indication from Councillor Bob Wilford in pre-briefing. Have you got anything to come in on, Bob?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my comment on the report was only that I recognise how very important it is to concentrate on these huge projects that are going ahead. But it states on page 119 there are 3,900 businesses within our borough, and I just feel that we also need to not forget we need to support these smaller businesses who are the bedrock of a lot of employment within our area. And as Gareth has said regarding Britain Ferry, huge industrial area in the past, and Port Talbot, huge industrial areas where there is still opportunity to put those large things in. But when it comes to the smaller wards like mine and some of the other valley wards, they rely on the smaller businesses as well. So I just wanted to put on record that how important it is to support those smaller businesses as well and push that forward as well as these large projects.
Thanks, Bob. Some good points there. Nicola, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, no, I agree with Councillor Wilford, and we've been trying to do that through the SPF funding that we had allocated to us, because it was a mixture of revenue and capital, and supporting those small businesses in local communities that employ local people was critical, really. And we had some really good case studies out of those investments, and we've done a couple of videos and you'll have seen them. published on the NPT website in terms of some of the success stories coming out of those business grant investments that have, you know, created employment opportunities and reinvigorated vitality of communities. So booths, I think, is Booths on the Bridge being one of them, which has been a huge success story. And we've got numerous stories similar across the county borough. So I do agree with you that the small businesses are equally as important as the larger businesses. Sadly, SPF funding has come to an end, or is coming to an end in March, and we're doing our best to lobby UK and Welsh Government to give us some flexibility on revenue and capital funding. Sadly, we're not necessarily getting the answer that we want from government, and we may be more restricted in future, which is a shame because it's delivered tremendous impact across the county borough for both large and small businesses alike.
Thanks, Nicola. Is that okay, Bob?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Nicola. I do recognise that a lot of good work is going on. As I say, I just wanted to place on record that we don't forget these things, and as we've been swept along by these huge projects, that we recognise the small businesses need support as well. But I do recognise a lot of support is being given through the SPF fund, and that we are doing good work there.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Councillor Laura Williams. Laura?
Thanks, Chair. My question's a new one. I didn't know if Jeremy wants to come in on that one instead of jumping back and forth.
Yeah, Councillor Hurley.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Laura. Yeah, it was just to repeat what Nicola said, in that, you know, with SPF, the funding went into Kilabebit, Glencorrog, Cwmgrach, right across, you know, in multiple areas. And obviously the database that is there is always there, and the support that the business team give to businesses, be wherever they are in NPT, is tremendous. So yeah, it will be ongoing. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Laura?
Thanks, Chair. My question is just around the M4 and infrastructure. So the M4 and other main roads like the A465 are mentioned a number of times along with rail services. Have organisations like Sutra and National Rail been consulted on the impact the strategy could have on their areas of infrastructure?
Consulted Sutra, but obviously Talbot, Richard Jones is a member of SLT, so he has had the opportunity to, but then hasn't put it into the political place plan, certainly, and the economic regeneration strategy.
Is that okay, Laura?
I think it's actually Welsh Government who are responsible. Sorry.
Sorry, I don't think we caught what, we couldn't hear what was said then. Sorry.
I'm repeating quite loud.
Yeah,
sorry, Andrew's softly spoken, whereas I'm perhaps a little bit louder and brasher, sorry. Sutra are actually responsible for the management and maintenance of the trunk road network. It's Welsh Government Transport Service that are responsible for the policy side of things. And this document is, whilst it's an economic development, sort of regen and economic development based policy, we will ensure that any delivery of the strategy incorporates Welsh Government ambitions going forward, as well as our ambitions. But I know that Councillor Nathan Goldup-John has not been able to attend today, but he did submit some questions and they were transport related. So I don't know whether this sort of lends us into reading those questions out and we can respond there if that would help.
Yeah, I think that's probably wise. Tom's got those questions, and perhaps I'll make some of my transport comments after that, and maybe we can deal with that in the round then.
I'll be Councillor Goodall-John for today. So he sent these through as he would have worded them, so I'll just read them out. So I wanted to raise a point about the core principles underpinning the development strategy, specifically around transport. At the moment, transport doesn't appear to be positioned as a key enabler of high quality development, and much of the existing pattern remains heavily car dependent. There is strong evidence that well-connected public transport networks boost productivity, stimulate economic growth and enhance environmental outcomes. What seems to be missing is the golden thread running through successful regeneration. earlier and later bus services that support shift patterns, reliable core rail connections, and higher density development focused around transport nodes. Enabling transport as a foundational driver of development, as well as private sector development, rather than a secondary consideration. This could significantly strengthen the strategy and help unlock the full potential of the proposed regeneration.
Okay, thanks for reading that out, Tom. I'm just going to add 2 of my transport comments into the mix now as well. So, you know, in terms of, you know, the report makes reference to, you know, strategically, we do have good connectivity in Neath Talbot, which is true from a point of view of motorway links, mainline railway links. You know, we've got the rivers, we've got the harbour, etc. But of course, when it comes on to transport for members of the public, it is a different issue, isn't it? And I think where the report doesn't fully acknowledge the issue is it talks about the valleys having challenge in public transport, but I think it's important to acknowledge that in areas like where I am in Sandfields, although we've got a significantly better service than the valleys, we still don't have a service that works to get people to work. So in essence, both communities face the same issue in reality. And I think the report needs to acknowledge the scale of that challenge. It probably underplays it slightly. I don't think it intends to underplay it, but I think it does. And then the other point I wanted to flag was the metro. I'm glad it's referenced. I keep making a fuss when it isn't referenced where I think it should be. I don't think the reference to it in the strategy is sufficient. I don't think it's necessarily the best description of the project. I don't think it fully explains some of the benefits that it could bring. You know, it talks about improved frequency, which is great. But what it doesn't acknowledge is the potential for example, a station in Darcy, for significantly improved links between Neath and Swansea, which could have a major impact on the vitality of Neath Town Centre. If you look at the metro proposals, it would link urban areas of Swansea to Neath. So I think there's just maybe a little bit of work to be done on just broadening that section a little bit more, just to fully capture the impact, because it's access to employment and training, yes, but it's also perhaps improving the vitality of our communities and town centres from links to other communities as well. So though they are my transport points.
Okay. Just to respond quickly, and if I miss something, either Ross or Andrew or both can step in. I think it is important perhaps for us to reinforce that transport infrastructure, not in terms of motorways and rail in the main railway line, whilst they are well provided within our area and we've got good connectivity generally, but our urban areas where our residents are and our communities are based potentially don't have access to high quality public transport, or at the moment active travel networks, and perhaps we need to identify clearer in the document that it is a barrier to people accessing the educational establishments we've got in and around the county borough, so they can improve their skills as well as accessing employment opportunities. You know, that is primarily not as a consequence of underinvestment by Neath Talbot, but it is a consequence of the way that transport funding is provided, possibly by Welsh Government and in turn the UK Government from where they get their funding. So I think perhaps Ross can perhaps increase that element within the report. And before we finalise the document, perhaps Ross and Andrew can link in with James from our engineering and transport service, and he can give you some information in terms of the current position regarding the metro and our regional transport plan and delivery plan, so that we can cross-reference those documents to the regeneration economic development strategy, and that then links the documents together to demonstrate our wider ambition. So I don't know whether anybody wants to step in, and I haven't covered everything.
Still got Ross, I think, for a few minutes. So do you want to come in, Ross, and confirm that you've taken on board those comments and will enhance them in the document, please?
Yes, no, absolutely. That's fine. And of course, that point about metro also aligns with the narrative that's in the new regional economic delivery plan refresh as well. So actually getting that read across will be important. So yes, we can certainly do that. But I've got notes of all the comments that you've made, and of course a lot of them were written in advance as well. So we've got that too. So we'll make sure that we capture those and reflect those again in the comments log, as well as in the next version that will go to Cabinet.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Do any other members want to respond on transport? Did you want anything to come back on, Laura? No. Okay. I'm just gonna check what else I've got. There were two other comments I wanted to make, not related to transport. So one was just the reference to there being a performance report in this is welcome, from a scrutiny point of view, for us to track projects and progress is fantastic. So to see that being considered from the outset is just really welcome. And then the next point was about alignment to the RLDP, which is referenced in the report. And I know there's a lot of work ongoing with the RLDP at the minute. Some things are still up in the air. And I just wondered how we're dealing with that challenge, particularly around, things like strategic sites and that balance of housing and employment, which isn't fully settled yet because our LDP is still in the development stages. How aligned can this be to our LDP, other than at a very high level of principles at the moment?
Yeah. Well, as you indicated, the replacement local development plan is currently being developed. We've consulted on the preferred strategy, and officers will soon be bringing back a report to members, given the outcome of that preferred strategy consultation and any changes that we will be making to the preferred strategy as a consequence of the consultations. So I understand that our planning colleagues have been linking in with Ross to try and ensure that they are aligned, albeit we are at the very early stages of the the replacement local development plan. Our existing local development plan is the adopted plan that we're using at present, so that is available and has been, to ensure that they are aligned. The delivery plan that has been referred to will include projects that try to deliver our high-level aspirations, and because what the replacement local development plan will try to do is to create sustainable communities where people can work and live and spend their leisure time without having to travel a long distance, because of the need to be sustainable in the long term. And that's what the economic development and regeneration strategy is also trying to do. We want to try and create to reinforce our foundational economy, as well as concentrating on our strategic employment sites, so that we are maximising the opportunities for everyone. So our ambitions are the same in the two documents. How we deliver in them is different because of the different legislation restrictions that we've got in place. So that was a bit of a wishy-washy answer to you, but I'm hoping that is helpful.
I don't think I could have expected much more than that, given the nature of the question, Nicola. So no, appreciate the response, and it's maybe a little bit reassuring. And I'm sure, if things did drastically change in that final, development plan, we've got scope to tweak these strategies as we see fit. But I can't envisage that happening in a really dramatic fashion. So, okay, I think that's the end of our questions, and I can't see any other members indicating. I've just been mulling over what we should do about recommendations here. I'm conscious that there's going to be, changes made to this document before it goes to Cabinet. I can't expect members will want to endorse this as it is, given all the feedback that's been given. I don't think it's really appropriate that we say we don't endorse it at all. What I'm perhaps suggesting that I do is that following this meeting, we put together a brief letter that can go alongside the Cabinet report with our feedback, and that says we support the document in principle, but these are the concerns and comments that we've raised in scrutiny that we'd like to see incorporated. So that's what I'm proposing we do, which I think is probably the fairest way to deal with this at the moment. So are members happy with that approach, where we say we actually support the document in principle, and we'll set out, based on the minutes of this meeting, the concerns and suggestions that we've given, and that we'd like to see those incorporated, and then that can go then with the final draft, which we won't see before Cabinet for Cabinet decision. Can I have a sort of seconder for that approach, please? Bob Wolford, you seconding, yeah? Brilliant. Okay, members, can I just get some advice from Tom?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just from an administrative point of view, sorry, I'm up to the boring legal bit. So if we maybe have a proposal and a seconder for the recommendation as it is, and then at that point we can pause. You could propose the amendment, we'll vote on that, and then that'll be the substantive recommendation, and then we can lock that in then, and that should be fine.
Okay, fine.
Sorry.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we'll take a proposal and a seconder for the recommendation as written in the report pack for the moment, just so we can deal with the administrative issues. Thanks, Bob. And the seconder, please. Councillor Henton, thank you. Right, so I'm proposing that to amend that recommendation, that instead we write a letter to the Cabinet member to go along with the report that suggests that we agree with this in principle, subject to the inclusion of our suggestions and addressing our concerns raised in this scrutiny meeting. Can I have a seconder for that, Councillor Rice? Thank you. So members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, I'll take it this is supported. Can you just pop your hand down, Councillor Rice? Thank you.
I see no indications to the contrary, Chair. I thought that has been supported, so that now forms part of the substantive recommendation. So we could just take another vote now on that as a whole. So that basically means that we've included the amendment that the Chair's proposed and the actual proposal of the report.
No problem. So do I need to propose and second again?
I'm afraid so. Sorry. Yeah.
So can I just have another proposal and seconder, please? It's Bob. Thank you. And we've got a choice here. I'm going to go with Councillor Henton again. And members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, I'll take it the substantive recommendation is approved.
I see no indications to the contrary, Chair. Therefore, that has been taken.
Thank you very much, and thanks for bearing with us on that. A little bit tedious, but we got there in the end.
Can I just say thank you to Ross, because I know that he has squeezed us in this morning in between his meetings. So thank you very much, Ross.
Yeah, much appreciated. I know you stayed a little longer than we expected as well. So yeah, well, that's fantastic. You are definitely free to go now.
Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, so we're now going backwards on the agenda to item 4A, the library's annual report, and thanks to Chris and Claire for being very patient waiting for their item. So that is on pages 39 to 76 of the agenda pack, members. So I'll hand over to officers if they've got anything to add before we go to questions.
Yes, if it's okay, I'll do a very brief overview, then Claire's going to do a slightly more in-depth one, and then take some questions. So just to say that this is a report about the Welsh Public Library Standards annual report. It's not a report on the library service overall. It's very specific. So and it's something that we have to air publicly every year as part of those standards. So it's the summarises the submission and summarises the results, and it's a judgment against those Welsh Government criteria. The outcome is overwhelmingly positive, actually, and so I'm really sort of super proud of the team for delivering such a great service in terms of particularly in terms of this outcome. It's worth just noting as well, and I imagine there'll be a couple of questions around it, but that this is very specific to the council-run libraries. It doesn't include the community libraries, and I can go into the details of that, but it's very specific around that.
Thank you. So as Chris mentioned, this report is the Welsh Public Library Standards, and it reports on the provision and performance of the Welsh public library services throughout Wales, and Neath Talbot is assessed individually. I'd just like to read a brief bit from the sort of executive summary of the annual assessment to just show some of the positive outcomes from the report. Neath Talbot continues to perform well in many areas. It is evident that the library service is appreciated by members of the local community who rate it highly. Attendances at events, training and informal support continue to be well above the median for Welsh library authorities. It is also positive that the book budget has increased this year. It's worth noting that Neath Talbot is joint highest ranking authority for the percentage of adults who think that using the library has helped them develop a new skill, and this is rated by users under 16 as well as adults. Both formal training and informal support attendances per capita are in the top quartile nationally, and per capita event attendance continues to be above the median for Welsh library authorities and has increased by 4% compared to 23-24 and 17% compared to 22-23. So there are some good positive sort of recommendations and coming back from Welsh Government there. I just wanted to put into perspective some of the so how libraries would have an impact on a member of the public. So we have to report an impact statement every year. And if you could permit me to read the impact statement that was submitted this year, you can see it to some of the depths of the services we offer. Roy, who first visited Sgwyn Library in June 2024 after the loss of his wife, had no experience of using digital devices. He sought help from library staff who recognised his needs extended beyond his routine IT support. Staff compiled a list of agencies who could offer him additional assistance and welcomed Roy as a regular visitor, providing a supportive and friendly environment. Roy attended one-to-one group digital training sessions and quickly developed confidence in using mobile phones, tablets and laptops, moving from novice to a skilled user in under 6 months. Roy also began providing support and advice to other digital learning classes in Sgwyn Library. His journey highlights the empowering impact of digital inclusion initiatives in libraries. In addition to his new digital skills, Roy discovered a passion for reading mysteries, engaging with fellow users, and to share book recommendations, and has become a confident user of BorrowBox. He's expanded his reading opportunities and embraces further digital resources. So I just wanted to show the breadth of the service, because I think sometimes data doesn't actually show the impact that the service does provide for local residents. I know I've provided, I know we've got a few questions around some of the concerns, and I'm happy to take those questions.
Brilliant.
Now, Chair.
No, thanks for that, Claire. And I think, you know, it is important to give that wider context of the impact libraries have. I think, you know, most members would visit their local libraries and see that impact, you know, firsthand. I know I certainly do in Sandfields. I'm just going to start with the report itself. I know Chris has sort of said this is a very specific report in terms of it's a Welsh Government performer, effectively, isn't it? And I think members appreciate that, but I think what might be useful in future is that it comes to scrutiny alongside with a slightly broader report from us as a service that can just maybe give a more rounded picture. Because this is kind of, it is a useful document in some, you know, in some senses. But I think if we had a slightly broader report that covered a bit of an annual look at the library service and the performance from our perspective, I think that would be a much neater way for it to come to scrutiny going forward. And I know I've had a few questions from members were around actually, well, this was maybe a difficult read in some senses and to interpret, and the scope of it may be a little bit too narrow in some areas for members. So I just wanted to pass that feedback on as chair. So I'm just looking through my questions list now, and I will go to Councillor Dave Whitelock, who had a question around the staffing levels.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Yeah, in the report it's mentioned the staffing levels and training. Are we getting anywhere on these figures? Are they being improved?
Thank you, Councillor Whitelock, for your question. In the Welsh Public Library Standards report, we report on opening hours per capita, and this hasn't been met since 2013, 2014, when we transferred 9 of our libraries into the community. We don't report on our community libraries in the Welsh Public Library Standard because we don't have any control over opening hours or, you know, the volunteers who run these libraries. So we really couldn't report on that, and that's where that sort of figure comes from.
Staff.
Surely there's got to be a better way of reporting it.
Sorry. Yes. Yeah. So so the staff. Yeah. So in order for us, because we closed X amount of libraries, in order for, and we can't rely on the volunteers because they're not our members of staff. There is.
I think it would take about to get us up to the level. It would take us about an extra £250,000 worth of cost to get us up to that level. But I think, given that the you know, the outputs are so positive, actually, it's a slightly odd indicator in my view, actually, in that, you know, it's an input rather than an output, and we're really sort of judged on the outputs of the library service rather than, you know, what we're putting in.
Yeah, and to put it in context, no authority in Wales meets this standard either.
No, that's. Dave, do you want to respond?
Yeah, just going to say I sat on education for many years when this used to come to education, and it was the same question over and over. Surely, I don't know how we could do it, but put a bit of pressure on Welsh Government to change the indicator so it's not appearing that it is a bad news story, but it is within the remit. I don't know how to word it. I'm sorry, I'm full of cold at the moment. My brain is not working properly. But it's a Welsh Government thing, I think, as well, that it should be worded better for the report, that it doesn't look so bad on the authorities. If you
no,
understand.
I think that yeah, I think we get the point you're making there, Dave, and I think it's understood, and I think it makes perfect sense. I think maybe it comes back a little bit to the point I made around maybe us doing a slightly wider report alongside this, because what we could actually do is go, well, the Welsh Government performer says this. If we include our community libraries within this, this is what this figure would look like. And actually, despite the staff numbers looking like this, the outcomes are higher. So it would allow us to give a bit of commentary as well, which I think might present that slightly more accurate picture. Okay, I'm going to move on to some questions from Councillor Carl Jordan regarding mobile libraries.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether my question is pertinent to this now, because it's a Welsh Public Library Services report, but if you don't mind, I'll ask it, and perhaps we can get some information regards our own. So firstly, one of the questions I'd like to ask is, how many mobile libraries do we currently have? The areas and the days that these mobile libraries are in those areas, and if so, do we as members need to advertise it a little bit more on social media, etc., just to try and promote it to get the uptake of lending higher than currently we're at? And that's my question. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you. We do have one mobile library. And while I have got the dates and times to hand, all the mobile schedule is on our library website. So if you go on to the council website, then look for libraries, and then onto home and library delivery, the mobile library schedule is on there, and you will be able to click. It's on a 3-weekly rota. You'll be able to click on week 1, week 2, and week 3, and it'll actually give you days, times and dates of when that mobile library will be in that area. As for advertising, we would always welcome additional sort of mentions wherever possible for whatever services we are running, and that would be very welcome from you. Thank you.
Okay, Carl.
Yeah, much appreciated. Thank you for your response, and thank you, Chair. Thank you.
There we are. Great. So just a couple of points from me. Again, this is looking at maybe future reports and how we look at this. We reference the survey work we do with our library users in this report. I think it'd be useful for us as a scrutiny committee to understand what the feedback looks like from members of the public, because that's a really valuable thing, and understanding what we take from that and what actions we take from that. Obviously, since I'm slightly outside the remit of this report as it's written now, but I'd be really interested in that. And I raised in pre-briefing, I know it was passed on about us being cash only, for example. I know I get feedback on that all the time, and it feels like something that ought to be an action on, and there might well be, but obviously, as we look at this sort of report, it doesn't give us that level of breadth, does it? So
I can give you a little bit of context. Libraries don't generate very much income, so even though we've looked into it, it is going to be a financial cost to us to implement something that's sort of not cash based then. So it's whether we want to sort of look at something like that for libraries long term, and then take a financial hit for it. Maybe we don't generate enough income to support it. When you think about what people come into libraries for, it's usually printouts or photocopying, and that is only 18 pence per sheet, so it's a very small amount of income we generate.
I think just going back to your point around the library service overall, maybe there's a conversation in terms of next year's work programme or something to see how we might want to scope out doing so. We really welcome that, and is actually very conscious that apart from this report, library doesn't really get an airing in terms of what it does.
Exactly, and I think it's important it does.
We welcome that. So maybe let's stick that out.
Yeah, we can pick up that outside this meeting, but welcome that you support that. And then probably, the card payment thing. I won't rabbit on about it. I think maybe we'd get some income in if people, had the option. I said in pre-briefing, and I've declared I'm a trustee of a community library. We've taken card payments for a long time, because the demand was there. The machines are cheap, fees are low. It worked for us. So it does feel a little bit strange when the community libraries on a volunteer basis have got a slightly higher level of service in that regard than we do. So, but I leave that point there. Before I move on, members, are there any other questions that members have got on this report? Councillor Laura Williams.
Yeah, thank you. It's been partially answered under Dave's question, but mine was around the quality indicator number 16 about the opening hours of the services not being met. But I think you're probably going to say it's due to community libraries being included, but there just wasn't any explanation in that answer. So if you've got any more feedback on that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, it is due to the community libraries not being part of the Welsh Public Library Standards report we submit, so we cannot include the opening hours of community libraries in the report. If we did, we would probably meet the opening hours per capita.
Let's just mention it as well.
Yeah, we have just received a grant from Welsh Government. We've applied for a grant to Welsh Government to look at our opening hours and to put on an open evening in each of our council managed libraries, just to see if there is a demand for opening in the evenings. So we've been successful in obtaining a grant from Welsh Government to pay our members of staff to open for 2 additional hours during one night in February and March, which will allow us to get some feedback from members of the public, and then that is an action we can work on.
Is that okay, Laura?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
And I know historically some of our libraries have had some evening opening in their schedules and others haven't, haven't they? So it's been a bit of a mixed bag. Councillor Carl Jordan.
Thank you again, Chair, for letting me come back in. It's just a massive thank you for the information I just jotted down there regards our mobile libraries. I've just been on to our homepage and looked at the week 1, 2 and 3 dates are there, or days, sorry, and it's quite a collected list, to be honest, you know, by the dates and times that they're going to be in certain areas, and I will be cutting, copying and pasting these to go onto my social media page, but much appreciated, thank you.
No problem there. That's great, Carl. And I think other members might want to take a look at that and see if it's something that might be of interest to their communities also. Okay, so I can't see any other indications. Do you want to pop your hand down, Carl? Oh, that's done. Brill. So this item, I believe, is just for noting. So we note that report. And we now move on to item 4C, which is the private place neighbourhood selection on pages 151 to 224. This one is post scrutiny, of course. The decision was made in Cabinet a few weeks ago. So I know we've got Councillor Hurley here. I don't know if we've got the leader in as well. I can't quite see on Teams, but the deputy leader's here. Do any Cabinet members want to introduce this item in terms of the neighbourhood election? I don't see any. Sean, do you want to just say something? Oh, no. Yeah.
Sorry, Sean.
Sorry, Jeremy.
My thing was blocked there. Well, yeah, obviously the decision has been made. A difficult one in that we realise we've got multiple deprived areas and we had to select one. Ideally, we would have had money to spread across, or additional money to fund the 3. And in relation to what we had as SPF, this isn't a comparison in that it is dedicated to one area of deprivation, so limited in what it can achieve. Thank you.
Okay, Jeremy. I'm just going to start with a couple of questions from myself, if that's okay. We looked at this in scrutiny before Christmas, and we had a bit of a discussion. We've got Lisa here as well in the room with us today, and there was a lot of uncertainty then around how the flexibility might be able to be applied in terms of areas that didn't fully meet the criteria. And obviously, when we looked at the 3 neighbourhoods before Christmas, we had Sandfields, Britton Ferry, and the Upper Avon Valley. The Upper Avon Valley one was struggling a little bit on some of the criteria, not meeting it perhaps as fully as the other areas. So between Christmas and the decision being made, did we get any additional clarity and comfort from the UK government about how we could apply that flexibility? I don't know whether the Cabinet are able to sort of share the advice that they were given there.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think the advice was around whether, looking at the report, whether we could join in with another authority, which came back as a negative. And again, Lisa can add to this as well if I miss anything. There was questions regarding numbers, and obviously the chosen one was slightly below, whether there was flexibility in that. And I think there was in also, one of the other areas was above the numbers. So that was asked. I think there was asked questions regarding the wards being joined together in continuity. And I think that was a necessity as well that came back. So there was also obviously a change in field in that officers were given different information. And it was as if, and Lisa perhaps can expand on this again, the information was being modified in basically Teams meetings. So they had to change criteria all the time. So it was quite a difficult process. Yeah, so obviously there's some risk in whatever we put forward in it being accepted. But there is strength now in the fact that obviously we had the letter of support off the MP and the letter of support off an MS to move forward on that, because that was one of the criteria as well, is having that support. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chairman. I think, certainly I'm aware, and the committee, I think, was aware as well of the the uncertainty, and perhaps that communication with UK government and us was maybe not as forthcoming perhaps as we would have liked in terms of the detail. I don't know, Lisa, if you can maybe advise or Nicola in terms of the information that we received from before Christmas when we sort of looked at the scrutiny briefly to the decision. Did we get any additional clarity in terms of the numbers and the criteria and the flexibility?
Do you want me to take this? Okay, so in terms of, we asked about flexibility in population criteria because there was a range, because originally when the advice came out, it was approximately 10,000, and then they said the range between 5,000 and 15,000 residents. But in exceptional cases where there's strong support and evidence, they could be slightly larger or slightly smaller, so that they clarified that it was up to us to actually put a case forward if it was slightly below or slightly over. So that was in terms of the population criteria. In terms of working outside the county borough area, that was a definite no. And then in terms of the flexibility, in terms of the contiguous nature, it means that adjoining wards, that was part of the programme, and there was no flexibility on the contiguous nature. And then in terms of capital revenue split, there was no, that was defined programme. So there were, in terms of the population, that was the area where there was a degree of flexibility, but the contiguous nature and working outside the county borough, that was a definite no. I'm not sure that clarifies the points.
Anything else to add there?
Nothing finished.
But I think the only other question that was perhaps unknown before Christmas was what happens if we submit a bid that wasn't accepted and what the process would be. Did we get any clarity on that?
So they is it okay if I just give the fact on that?
Yeah.
So in terms of the case, so we had to put forward looking at the deprivation indices. We've submitted the pro forma, and we did say, what would happen if UK government decided that they didn't agree without choice. But they said that they would consider all pro forma submitted, and they would look at all the data, and they would come back for points of clarification. So we didn't get a clear answer to there was a pass or a fail, but that they would work with the local authority place, so there were 9 in Wales and then the rest across the UK. So that was, but they would look at the compelling place, and also if the data had potentially been independently reviewed, and we submitted an independent review of the data with our submission.
Yeah. So one last thing, just in terms of process, and I know members have got some questions, perhaps for the cabinet members, in terms of some of the rationale behind the decision from their point of view. What happens now? So we've made a submission. What's the process from here on?
So we submitted by the deadline of the 9th of January, and we had acknowledgement that they received the pro forma and the supporting documentation, and we haven't heard anything yet. In terms of the Pride in Place programme prospectus, the next step will be that UK government will contact us and with any points of clarification, and then they will give the next steps in terms of we agree with your choice, and then they will work with us. Then they'll appoint a UK government official to work with us to look at setting up the neighbourhood board and the chair appointment. So that we haven't had any, but that is it listed in the prospectus. Yeah.
Brilliant. Is there a timeline on that roughly?
There was, yeah. So it's because it will be July to look at appointing the chair, and then of course the money will start flowing in April 2027. So the board and the investment plan would need to be set up before that time.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go to Councillor Gareth Rice. I know you expressed a lot of your comments on Britain Ferry earlier on, but I don't know if you had any specific questions in relation to this decision, Gareth.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. You covered some of my points there. Thank you. And like you said, I the points I made in the previous agenda item. But with that in mind, I do have to express my deep disappointment at the decision not to award it to the Britain Ferry cluster. I feel it was and still is the most deserving option, and is in desperate need of major investment, which we've touched on earlier. Now, it's not a race to the bottom by any means, but whilst all 3 areas nominated are no doubt in need of investment. I personally felt that the Avon Valley was the weaker of the three options. Some of the points we touched on there, you know, it didn't meet all the criteria. It was a risky choice, that it may be rejected due to it not fitting that criteria. In the report we submitted, it was faced the most challenges and weaknesses of the three options. It serves the least amount of people, residents rather, so less people stand to benefit from the funding. And there are concerns touched on whether or not it has the opportunities to sustain projects over the full 10-year period. And almost a question, what you just mentioned there, Sean, about what is there a backup plan should the Avon Valley's proposal be rejected? And do we risk losing all the funding altogether because we submitted a bid that doesn't meet the criteria? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Gareth. I don't know, Jeremy, if you want to start with a response on those questions. Officers might want to come in on some of the detail and technical elements. Is that okay?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I can totally understand disappointment in any area that hasn't been awarded the funding, but the difficulty is you know, one has to be chosen. I think a lot of it was based on the deprivation index details, and when we looked at Avon, that was going back to 2005 and always being in the highest of deprivation. And this isn't the defence scar, but you know, Britain Ferry had dropped down. But prior to that, the 2019, it was in the hundreds in the ranking tables, although it's a terrible thing to be ranking places in deprivation. And obviously we had a criteria change in the middle of this assessment, in that the 2025 assessment details come out pushing Avon back down to number 15. So that's, you know, and that's in, it was a marked, it was noticed that they had gone into, you know, a dip in deprivation again. So it, you know, it's almost a cry for help, but every area is crying for help, you know, the ones that we've got in deprivation. Thank you. Regarding the, you know, the next process, you know, Lisa, again, may give us, I don't think whether there is a backup plan. Obviously the backup plan is you've got two other wards that are there, but it'll depend on UK Gov, Welsh Gov, on what comes back on their opinion on it. So thanks.
Yeah, I'm just going to come in briefly just to say, you know, in terms of the ward areas, you know, Councillor Dacey expressed his disappointment about our Avon ward in pre-briefing. We can't make it today, and of course I'm a member for Sandfields, so you know, I think we'd all like to see the investment in our communities, and we've probably all expressed similar sentiments there, haven't we? I just thought it was important just to flag that. I don't know, Lisa, if you had anything to add. I don't think there's much more really, is there? No, and there's a lot of unknowns still, isn't there? I can see Councillor Llewellyn's got his hand up. Do you want to come in, Alan, and then I'll see if members want to come back.
It's just a brief comment, really. That obviously, I think we have all shared concerns about the drawbacks of the particular scheme that's been put forward by UK government, because the Pride in Place doesn't replace, you know, all of the previous European funding that we would have been entitled to. It's also because of this sort of selective and competitive element. You know, it's the really unfortunate situation of basically pitching one area of deprivation against another and trying to work our way through those criterias and the deprivation rankings, which is not something that I don't think that any of us have wanted to do. The final decision, which has been submitted to UK government, was focusing on the deprivation levels, the consistent deprivation levels in the Avon Valley, and the need to try and turn that area around. But the truth is, of course, that all three of the areas that we were looking at in detail desperately need this investment. And in fact, there are other areas across the county borough, such as parts of the Swansea Valley, the Amman Valley, the Dilys Valley, that also have significant areas of deprivation, which we have tried to address through various schemes, but are not going to meet the criteria of the Pride in Place scheme. So I think there's a real disadvantage and a fault in the PIP, and the leader of the council has written to Steve Reid, who's the Secretary of State. I just really looked at the letter that was sent yesterday. I think it'd be helpful. I don't think the leader's on the call at the moment, but I think it would be helpful if a copy of that letter was sent to all members of this committee, Chair, because it does make the case about how difficult it is, the difficulties the authority has been placed in having to make a selection, and the lack of flexibility. And of course, contrary to our previous experience with the Shared Prosperity Fund, where in effect we were able to set the priorities and the distribution and the flexibility as a local authority with the first-hand knowledge of the affected communities. That has not been the process here. Notwithstanding that, we believe that we have submitted a strong case for the Avon Valley. Obviously, we wait the feedback from the Secretary of State, but the submission has been endorsed by Stephen Kinnock, MP, David Rees, MS, and Sinead Williams, MS. So I think there may be others as well, but I'm aware of those three having written in support. So I'm sure that we will all work together to make the make the projects a success in the Avon Valley, but we'll continue to lobby to make sure that the level of funding that we need to address deprivation, certainly in our county of Neath for Talbot, but we can say the same for Wales as a whole, needs to be further ramped up from UK government and in association with the Welsh government. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Alan. And the letter was circulated to ward members in the three shortlisted communities, but it hasn't gone to the wider scrutiny committee. So I'll make sure Tom circulates that after the meeting. But I did appreciate having a copy of that letter. I can see Councillor Scott Jones wants to come in. Scott, obviously a member for the Upper Avon Valley and a cabinet member. So we'll have a big stake in this. Scott.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you, Sean. Just a couple of points. I mean, you'd be pleased to know that I don't intend to go over everything that I've said in previous scrutiny meetings, including the visible scrutiny that took place previously and cabinet meetings. But I just want to point out from my perspective to make it absolutely clear that as far as I'm concerned, there should have been scope from the offset of this announcement for it to be more than one community benefiting from this. And of course, quite clearly, politically or not, I've got to throw that ball back into the court of the Labour Party, because at the end of the day, it's the Labour government in London who set out these strict criteria. And despite efforts of officers and politically the cabinet, numerous meetings have taken place, political meetings have taken place, where we've tried to push this. So ultimately, I suppose what I'm saying is the decision making around the criteria of whether or not it can be one community or more lies with the powers that be outside of this authority. So I'd respectfully sort of suggest to Mr. Rice and anyone else that they might want to take this up with the powers to be outside of the authority. I mean, in terms of facts and figures, I mean, very briefly, if we're going back on the Wales Index for Multiple Deprivation, in 2011, on comparison, Britain Ferry was 105th ranked, as where Cummer was 25th ranked. In 2014, Britain Ferry was 123rd ranked, in comparison to 22 with Cummer. However, in 2019, and Councillor Rice is absolutely right, that's where Britain Ferry took the lead in terms of being most deprived within Neath Talbot. However, unfortunately, what has happened since is the most recent figures that have come out in 2026, towards the end of 2025, going into 2026, has resulted in Cummer being the most deprived within Neath Talbot again. So I think if we're going back over a 20-year period, he's absolutely right to advocate, you know, that Britain Ferry was one of the highest for the period of 2019 onwards. But in comparison, over the last 5 reviews of this process, Cymru has always ranked the highest within Neath Talbot. So I think I'll leave it there, Chair, really, because I think quite a lot of explanations have been given by officers and by the relevant cabinet member. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Scott, and some fair points well made there on both the politics and the data. So thank you for making those. Are there any other questions or queries from members on this item? I don't see any indications at the moment. No, brilliant. So, members, this is just for noting. Oh, sorry, Councillor Rice, do you want to just come in briefly before I move on?
Yeah, thank you, Sean. I just want to reiterate that I did state that all areas I felt were in desperate need of investment, and I did say it's not a race to the bottom. I'm quite disappointed that a political point was made on this, where it was just purely a choice of areas of most need. I didn't make no political bias or anything. I just made my point as a Britain Ferry resident. And best of luck to the Avon Valley. I hope they put it to good use and they use it all. But with that in mind, it's now been identified that Britain Ferry cluster and the Aberafon cluster have been identified as being desperate needs. So may I ask at this opportunity then what council are going to do going forward to highlight these two areas that we've agreed and formally acknowledge that they are in desperate need of investment. Whether that's a point for outside of the scrutiny meeting, I'm not sure, but that's a question anyway. Thank you.
No, it's a fair question, Gareth. I don't know if officers are anything to come in on that or cabinet members at this point in time. Jeremy?
Thanks, Chair, again. Again, Andrew can back me up on this or advise me if I'm wrong in any way. I know that there is possibly an extension to the transforming towns, which when Britain Ferry gets the place plan might be applicable. Plus other funding that Andrew might know about. So we need to be obviously more alert and more clever in using those options. Thank you.
Yes, that's correct, Councillor Hurley. The Welsh Government has announced an additional £6 million for South West Wales to cover the placemaking grants up until the end of the financial year 2027. So, as you quite rightly say, once we've got the Britain Ferry Place plan in place, then we'd be able to access that funding for that area.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I think just to follow on from Councillor Rice's point, I mean, it's a fair one in terms of acknowledging the issue. We need to take some steps, don't we? And I think the placemaking grants are part of that. Of course, we've got to recognise that the pride of place programme's got a revenue element, which can obviously have impacts in different ways in communities. So I think it is certainly something for the cabinet to sort of mull over, isn't it? Really about how that support could be provided and how to make the case for that. And I'm sure we can pick that up in scrutiny going forward. But Nicola?
Yeah, just to add, the cluster around the Aberafon and Sandfields area did actually include an element of the town centre. So we've got a place plan for Port Talbot town centre, which may support Aberafon and Sandfields. And we've also got the adopted Aberafon seafront strategy that my colleague Chris Saunders and staff within my service have been leading on, and hopefully that will generate benefits in terms of economic activity within the Aberafon and Sandfields area as well. And I referred earlier on to the work that we've started doing in Britain Ferry in terms of master planning that area with colleagues from other organisations.
Thanks, Nicola. I think it's there's definitely activity happening in those communities, isn't there? It's just a matter of the focus on deprivation is maybe slightly different, isn't it, compared to the Pride in Place programme. Okay, great. So members, we'll note this report and thanks everyone for the contributions and the discussion there. So I'm going to move this on now to item 4D, which is the Pride in Place Impact Fund verbal update. So I'm handing over to Lisa Willis now just to take us through this. For members, this is the fund that we've had email correspondence from Paul Hinder regarding funding for members and our wards. So over to you, Lisa, to just give us an overview.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. So I'm Lisa Willis, and as Chair said, I'm going to give you an update on the Pride in Place Impact Fund. Just checking you can see I can't put into slide. Won't let me go into slide mode because I haven't found. Can people see the slides? I'm sorry, it's in presenter mode at the moment. So this is UK Government Pride in Place Impact Fund. In terms of a background, this is part of the UK Government's Pride in Place programme. We've just discussed the neighbourhood selection. This is an impact fund. This is launched in September last year, and this is to support visible improvements across our high streets and also improving places and spaces of community value. It's a 2-year fund, so 25-26 financial year and 26-27, and it's 1.5 million capital to invest in all wards in Neath Talbot. So in comparison to the Pride in Place programme neighbourhood selection, this is available to all wards across the county borough to be committed by March 2027. And the aim of the fund is to help rebuild community pride in local places. Local authorities have flexibility to develop a delivery model. And these slides and this is to get support and input into our proposed delivery model, which is going to go to Cabinet on the 4th of February. Local authorities need to ensure we engage with communities, also with MPs and MSs, and also wider stakeholders on those projects prioritised for delivery under this fund. And we have a regular reporting regime to UK Government in terms of outputs and outcomes. There are 3 key areas to this fund. So these are the objectives. So there's one for community spaces, one for public spaces, and one for high street and town centre revitalisation. And that is not just in those areas which have place plans. This is sort of in all our high streets and towns and villages and settlements across the county borough. So there's under community spaces, there's an aim there of creating, extending, improving, refurbishing existing community facilities, enabling community organisations to take control or ownership of underused but valued local assets. Public spaces, looking at the physical environment, so green spaces, public squares, outdoor play, sports and leisure spaces, installing street furniture, public art, wayfinding, and then in terms of our towns and villages and settlements, revitalisation, make them more attractive, encouraging economic activity, such as shop frontages, premises, streetscape improvements, trails, and also looking at infrastructure. So I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview of, so there's a list in the Pride in Place Impact Fund prospectus. There is a list of indicative activities, and Paul Hinder, who's with me in the room today, he'll go through a bit of the application, but we'll come to that in a second, just give you a bit of an overview. So there's a lot of indicative activities, quite a broad programme of capital funding. So that's the type of activities under community spaces. And then there's another type of activities under public spaces. And there's another list of activities under high street, town centre and villages activities as well. In terms of the proposed delivery model for Neath Talbot, so the fund will be called Neath Talbot Pride in Place Impact Fund. Apologies for the long title. The budget fund is 1.5 million. The funding period is between September and March 2027. So all funding needs to be committed by March 2027 with a little bit of flexibility in completion of projects after March 2027. What we are proposing our delivery model is that members, so each member from across the county borough will work with your communities that you represent to bring forward any priority projects aligned to the Pride in Place Impact Fund guidelines. And so there's an indicative allocation of £25,000 per member. And so Paul Hinder and the team will support members, so to work with members to identify those projects that are priority within your communities. We are finalising the fund guidance and application forms. We're holding an all members seminar, and I think that's going to be the second week in February, to ensure that all members are aware of the fund, so you can work with your communities. And then my team then will monitor the outputs, outcomes, working with Paul and the team, because there's regular reporting to UK government, and to make sure we comply with the UK government fund criteria, we'll carry out that monitoring. So in terms of how to apply, it's going to members initially will contact Paul and Eloise in the project development and funding unit for initial discussion on projects. And then Paul and the team will review if your projects align to the fund priorities, and then there'll be an application form and guidance. So Paul, are you happy for me to hand over to you?
Fine, Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Probably quite interested. The devil is in the detail, and Lisa and I have been working hard this week to try and detail and put a bit of flesh on the bones. We're almost there with an application form, guidance notes for applicants. As Lisa has said, it's 100% capital, and for members who have experience of the former Members Community Fund, it's not too dissimilar to that. There were some successes to be had in tranche 1 and tranche 2 of the Members Community Fund, and this is a similar guise, but it's 100% capital. And again, members will be aware that capital schemes have got a habit of needing a lot of time, preparatory time, in order to get them across the line. Time is of the essence, and apologies for preempting and maybe getting ahead of the game before Scrutiny Committee or Cabinet, but I've already been in contact with the 60 members to ascertain as to what their local priorities might be. We've had audiences, person-to-person, Teams meetings, telephone calls. There's a lot of interest out there at the moment. And in the not too distant future, I think I'll be equipped with an application form and drill down to the detail within the Welsh Government, UK Government prospectus. And then we'll be able to give you good advice on the do's and don'ts, eligibilities, ineligibilities. Our chums in accountancy have equipped me with what they deem to be capital, so that we don't get into any trouble supporting projects that are considered to be revenue. But I'm happy to take individual audiences with individual members. I've accomplished many already. There are more to come. And there are questions I know about multi-member wards, etc., which I'm willing to field, Chair.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul.
Just add, Chair, so in terms of the guidance, and so it's a capital programme, but we need to make sure that there are no ongoing revenue implications, because so that's, and also, as Paul mentions, guidance on what is capital, and also in terms of capital projects, we've got a user guide in terms of, does your project require planning? Does it require sustainable urban drainage, things like that? So we have, so people know upfront what's required, and there could be projects for external organisations, but there could be projects that members have identified, and that they're sort of led by the council. So there is that balance, isn't there? A mix of projects. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, as per the Members Community Fund, some projects might be internalised between different departments within the council. Ultimately, we need a project code, cost codes attributed to the work of each of the 60 of the county councillors. Some projects may be assets in the County Borough Council's ownership, and some projects, as last time, will be in the ownership of the voluntary community sector. Whatever the member identifies really as a local priority, as long as it's deliverable within the timescales, I'm sure we can work it up. And I know there's some concern about how money might be spent, if it's not spent, etc. And again, I will take those questions accordingly.
Brilliant. Am I okay to go to questions now? Fantastic. I'm going to go to Councillor Gareth Rice. I know he's got questions on unspent funds.
Yeah, that's right, Sean, thank you. The question, well, some of the questions we already answered there. So do we have to apply for each project individually, or is it just for the access to the £25,000 each, first of all? And what happens then, as Sean said, what happens to the unspent monies at the end of the term? Could, as we approach the end of the budget time frame, if we can see that as large pots of money unspent in, let's say, neighbouring wards or whatever, could we then request to via that money to projects within our areas, or does all that money have to be returned unspent?
I think, Councillor Royce, we dealt with the money side of it. We will allocate against well-worked, carefully thought through projects, project by project. So it's not a gift, should we say, of 25,000, and then we do it as a collective. It'll be on a project by project basis. So we might release £5,000–6,000 to one project, and then in Britain Ferry East you would move on to your next project, and then we'd fund that and so on until the £25,000 was exhausted. Not forgetting, of course, there might be some match funding opportunities to be had, and that's where I come in, because when we had the members fund last time, it was £10,000 for each of the 64 county councillors. £640,000 4 or 5 years ago did, in the first tranche, develop £1.3 million worth of projects, because in my world we try and get best value, added value, and sometimes in a certain ward you can work up the £25,000 and the payback can be £50,000+ according to whether I can make the association with other funding. But it'll be done on a project by project basis. I know the question is being asked about minimum threshold. I think with £25,000 at your disposal and the disposal of the other 59 members, we set the minimum grant award at £5,000. Otherwise, it becomes a complete raft of paper chase. If you would develop 5 projects with your 25,000 and the other members chose to do the same, I'd be facing 300 projects, which is a lot of paper. If somebody can invest the whole of their 25,000, maybe they like to combine efforts in a multi-member ward and make that 25,000, 75,000. That would mean that I could process the money a lot quicker. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if the money is not committed by the 31st of March 2027, it goes back to UK government, and I want to avoid that, because we want this money to work inside Neath Talbot County Borough. I would not want to send any of it back, but perhaps this is why I've got everybody in the starting blocks early, is because the sooner we start, the sooner we finish. But I'm quite happy to meet councillors in my office, come and discuss this with you, to get, as I say, fully worked deliverable projects in the ground and get your 25,000 out there working in Britain Ferry East and other parts of the county borough.
Thanks, Paul. Gareth, do you have any other follow-up questions?
No, that's great. Thank you. And thank you for the answers. I'm just quite excited. I wasn't part of the previous rounds of £10,000. I wasn't elected then, so I look forward to this. And yeah, I look forward to speaking to you further, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks, Gareth. I think, it'd be interesting when the finals of the cabinet report comes. I think there probably will need to be a bit of narrative around dealing with the unspent money issue, because I think it'll be a hell of a feat if every member gets every penny out. And I'm sure we'll need a plan to allocate that money in a fair way, whether that goes to other projects internally, but I think that will need to be thought of, or just to reassure members on that front. Lisa?
In terms of that, so we have to regularly report to UK government with a credible plan that we're going to spend, commit by March 2027. So in October 2026, February 26th now, we have to submit a credible plan for our expenditure until March 2027. So potentially at that point, we can do a review of what money's been spent, what money hasn't been spent, what money is in the pipeline, and that could be worked into a process, Chair, for and that could be included in the Cabinet report for agreement, if that's something that Scrutiny would suggest we include.
If I can just come in on that as well, add a bit of extra sort of management spiel to it. I know this is topical. People have said about money unspent. The fun part of it is how, why, when, and who really, because somebody's, I know, there were legitimate reasons why some of the members' money wasn't spent last time, because we were torpedoed by people like Cadw and so forth. There was a nice £10,000 scheme lined up in Jersey Park, and it didn't happen. Nothing to do with the councillor. It was the legislative requirements, listed building consents, etc. And they came and they caught us really very late on in the process. Having said that, when we had tranche 1 of the members' fund last time round, 0.9% of the money in the members' funded tranche 1 was unspent. 0.9%, which is £5,000 out of the 640,000. So don't get too precious about this now, because if the councillors are not spending, I'll be all over them.
Yeah.
In the second tranche, 3.4% of it was unspent, which is about £22,000 worth, again for legitimate reason. But I'd love to be in a position where we've got the lion's share of the money committed. How we reallocate, repurpose the money is going to be a hot potato, and we haven't got detail on that yet. But I don't want to go to any detail on that, because we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Fair enough, Bon. I do recall you chasing councillors and maybe putting forward suggestions if nothing was coming forward to try and get that money out of the door previously.
Can I just say, Chair, that there was a question about pre-existing projects, and yes, I may have identified a couple of priorities for local members. I say, well, have you thought of this one? Often with pre-existing projects, investment in those is more deliverable than trying to create a new project, because you've got the legislative requirements behind new projects, which you may not have got on pre-existing. I just want to help members get over the line, get the money invested, make the improvements, get the right responses to local community need as quickly as we can, because the bottom line is deliverability.
Absolutely. I've got Councillor Helen Perry-Clark to get in. Helen.
Thank you. In the slides, it was said that this will have to be done in conjunction with MPs and MSs. How would that envisage that that's going to happen and going to work, especially as we've got an election in the middle as well?
Fair point, Lisa.
Thank you for the question. And yes, you're right. There is in the prospectus, we have to engage with MPs, MSs and the wider stakeholder groups, as we had to do for the neighbourhood selection. So following scrutiny, following cabinet, we will then write to the MPs and MSs and our local economic partnership group, which has representation from third sector, private sector and also public sector, to say this is our way forward in terms of our delivery model for the Pride and Place Impact Fund. So where the delivery model and how it's going to reach every part of the communities, because the members will be working with the community to identify that. So that aligns the criteria of working with communities. And then when the projects are approved by Paul, we will then disseminate regular reporting then to senior management team, to our MPs, MSs, to advise them on those projects which are coming through and being approved. So that is we have built that into our programme to ensure there is engagement with, and following Senate elections, well, that process will remain the same.
Thank you. And Helen, yeah.
Yeah, they don't have any veto on it though, do they? It's just merely talking.
It's engagement.
Just
telling
it's
advising of what's happening. Yes.
that is helpful clarity because I had a vision of us having to send them for sign off. And I think that is a much easier process if we're just advising them of what we're doing, isn't it? So a good question there, Helen. Councillor Laura Williams. Laura?
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. The first one's quite basic. It's just around those slides. Will all members see sight of that, or will that be at the seminar?
So the seminar is, oh, sorry, Chair.
No, go ahead.
So the seminar is scheduled, it's just be finalised. I think it's the 10th of February at 9 o'clock. So we know a member seminar. It'll be recorded. So if members can't, and we will be talking through the application form, the eligible activities, and then that's going to make sure that every member, and that's something that Councillor Simon Noyle, who is the cabinet member responsible for the impact fund, mentioned at cabinet members briefing. He wants to make sure that all members are aware of the fund. So we can share these slides. So Tom, you can circulate these slides after the meeting today. But it's subject to cabinet's decision on the, we haven't had cabinet's decision on the delivery model yet. So that's why we come through scrutiny to ensure we have input from yourselves on the delivery model.
Is that okay, Laura?
Yeah, thank you. And then my two questions then around the actual funds. So do we have buy-in and support from other council departments such as street care for things like street furniture being installed? And then my second one is, do all projects have to have community groups attached to them, or can the money be spent on projects where the councillor is heading up the project?
I think that's me, Chair. Yeah. We will be working with other departments as we did with the members fund. We had road traffic orders, all sorts last time round. When it's a street scene, equipped play area proposal, we're going to have to take advice from the immediate department. That dialogue has already been had, Councillor Williams, with our colleagues in Playground Improvement Programme. I think we don't want to add to the council's revenue concerns. So we will be working with other departments as per the unique nature of the project. This might be greening initiatives. We pull in our biodiversity people. It might be, as you say, street furnishings. It might be something to do with the highways. So we'd have to work with the appropriate colleagues on that one. It's not essential that a community organisation is at the forefront. Each project will be different. There are examples in the Taibach Margam area where friends of Margam Park might want to, you might want to lend your ear to their aspirations, but we'll do it on a case-by-case basis, and money might be paid directly into one of the third sector voluntary organisations' accounts and sort codes to get so that they get on with the project. But as I said before, if it's an NPT CBC project, we'd have a project code which could be set up with our capital programming people, and then Eloise and I will project manage and get the project, as you know, delivered. Defibrillators were very popular last time round. Because the minimum grant aid award this time round is £5,000. I don't think equipment like that will necessarily feature. So we're looking at renewal, upgrade, refurbishment, creating new capital assets, community spaces and so forth. So it will be what it'll be, but the sooner we get in those starting blocks, the better. And after the cabinet meeting on the 4th and the all member seminar on the 10th, we need to get this in train.
Okay, Laura.
Yeah, thank you both.
Great. Okay, we are running over time a little bit. It's 2 minutes past 12. So I'm just going to take us to the end of this item now and note the update. And thanks, Lisa and Paul, for coming and giving us this update as well. It is much appreciated. Our next item is performance monitoring, item 6A, which is on pages 225 to 406. I'm just checking in on everybody first because it is 3 minutes past 12. Is everyone okay to stay in terms of members and relevant officers? If there's any issues, do let me know. But I think we should hopefully be able to cover off this item without having a comfort break, unless there's any objections. I will say if other officers done their reports need to leave, you're more than welcome to leave. I'm not going to hold you here past the allocated time of the meeting. So I'll just take us then to that item on page 225, 406. So do any officers want to introduce this item for the question? Nicola?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As members will see from the report, it's quite a detailed update in terms of the delivery of the performance measures that are included within the corporate strategy, includes updates in terms of the risk register and the corporate priorities and the KPIs. Generally, we're in a very good place. In terms of the performance, the report does, however, acknowledge that there are significant budget overspends in some of our areas, including education, leisure and lifelong learning, social services, housing and community safety, and in my directorate, environment and regen. My directorate is £970,000. And the main reasons associated with those overspends have been identified as core budget pressures, insofar as the mitigation measures that we took to try and reduce that overspend, despite best efforts, were ineffective. And we've managed to secure additional funding in the new budget, albeit I appreciate that that's not been confirmed yet and has only recently gone out to consultation, but those budget pressures are included within that consultation document. And if those budget pressures are supported, that overspend should be diminished quite significantly. But the budget pressures in my directorate are primarily reporting to the visible services and street scene scrutiny subcommittee rather than this particular subcommittee. And I do appreciate that a question has been raised from pre-briefing about identifying which of the scrutiny committees these KPIs refer to, and perhaps we can work with our colleagues in corporate services to make it a little bit easier for you to identify which KPIs and priorities are linked to this subcommittee as opposed to others going forward. So we're more than happy to work with, I say, corporate services on that in the future to make it a little bit easier, because it is quite complicated given the varied nature of the services that we deliver and the services covered by this scrutiny committee. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Nicola, and yeah, appreciate the picking up that comment around identifying which areas are under which committee. Obviously, we've had changes to scrutiny committees as well, so I think we all get caught up now and again with those problems. Shall I go straight to questions from members now?
Yes, please.
Are there any questions from committee members on this item? Can't see any at the moment, so I'll just run through a couple of quick things. So one was in relation to page 338 or 48 of business plan actions, the corporate accommodation strategy, and says a draft strategy has been developed. I'm just wondering what the timelines are around that. I know there's I've taken strategy members in the autumn. Is that autumn 26 or was that autumn 25? I know this has rumbled on for a while, so I'd just be interested to just have a really brief update, because I know it's been on our scrutiny kind of forward look as well.
Yeah, this strategy has been a long time coming. I do appreciate the members in the cabinet as well as members from the scrutiny committee have been very patient with us, and I apologise for the delay. We had an updated version which was prepared just before the Christmas break, which was circulated to the Chief Exec and myself, and we've made a number of significant comments on that version of the document, and it has been updated. I've looked at the updated version of it last week, and I provided my comments back to Simon Brennan, who's leading on the accommodation strategy. He's selfishly on holidays this week, but when he returns on Monday, I'm hoping that we'll be in a position where we can update the document, take it through SLT and Cabinet members briefing with a view to hopefully making it available to scrutiny and taking it through the Cabinet process within the next couple of months at the very latest.
Okay, thanks for that, Nicola. I think if we'll have a bit of engagement outside the meeting to work out timings wise for scrutiny, because I don't think we've got an indicative date on the forward to a programme yet, and I know we might cross over into civic years as well, but if we can try and get that programme then that'd be really welcome. I know it's no mean feat pulling a strategy like this together, so I think we can understand why there might be a little bit of a delay. The other question from me was in relation to the RLDP. I suppose I had to flag it because it's there, and I know there's been issues in terms of that that members have been briefed on, perhaps separately, but I just had to kind of point that out and flag it in terms of something that we are struggling with at the moment in terms of our timely delivery of that strategy. I think it is being delivered and it will be delivered. It's just the timeliness of it, isn't it? And I don't know if there's been any updates since members were last briefed on it, Nicola.
I know that Kerry's on the line, so I'll start, Kerry, and perhaps if I've missed something or if I've inaccurately advised members, I can rely on you to come in. But before Christmas, we were aware that some concerns had been expressed by members in relation to the preferred strategy. So the preferred strategy went out to consultation earlier last year, and we secured feedback on the preferred strategy and we took members through that. What we then did is we held individual group meetings with members so that we can give them detailed feedback in relation to the consultation responses that we had received and the issues that we have in relation to progressing with the replacement local development plan at pace, given the risks associated with not having a development plan in place and the policy void that would occur as a consequence of that. And that is not a place that we want to be in for a long period of time. It's unavoidable that we will be in that position for a short period of time, but we need to do everything we can to try and minimise that so that we have a strong policy base to enable local decisions to be made, rather than having to make decision based on appeals by PEDU, which are completely out of our control as an authority. So we undertook that work, as I say, before Christmas. Kerry and his team are hoping to take a written report through the decision-making process in February. And that will give written confirmation of the responses that we had back to the consultation, together with any potential proposed changes that we would like to make to the preferred strategy as a consequence of the responses we've received. And then we will hopefully get endorsement of that suggested way forward to enable us to move on with the deposit stage of the local replacement local development plan, which members may be aware is where all the detailed policies and the plans identifying settlement limits, growth areas, housing allocations, employment land allocations, and so on. That's where that detail will be made available to members. So we hope to be getting back on target and getting through that stage shortly. I'm not sure, Kerry, if I've missed anything that you'd like to add or whether I've completely got it wrong and you want to correct me. Kerry, if you could.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I think you've covered all the pertinent points, really. I mean, I suppose the only thing I would add, Nick has perhaps alluded to it. I think we're currently working with Democratic Services at the moment with a view to looking to convene potentially a special council meeting in February, as Nick has suggested, and yeah, there'll likely be two elements to that report. One will be covering off what Nick has addressed in terms of picking up some potential slight amendments to the approach that we have going forward, and ultimately seek agreement from full council in terms of a pathway towards the deposit plan. And I think in order to avoid falling foul of procedural matters, it's likely that that report will also need to just address the requirement to update the timetable in the delivery agreement, because what we can't do if we go out to consultation on the deposit plan without updating the delivery agreement, then that will likely lead us to problems procedurally. So we'll need to address that going forward as well. So as I say, that's the plan. Hopefully things will become even more clearer to members of council when we convene that meeting in February. But as I say, Nick has covered all the main points. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Kerry. Thanks both for the update there. It is welcome, and suppose things have moved on a little bit from some of the briefings we've had as political group members as well. So yeah, it's very welcome to have that update, and I can see we're trying our best, aren't we, to make sure there's as much support as that we can get to find a way forward. I've got one more question which I didn't indicate pre-briefing, so it may need to be picked up with an email update. I appreciate that, which was around on page 78 or 368 in our agenda pack, around zero emissions buses on key transport corridors. So there's a reference to the project being placed on hold by Welsh Government due to funding and hydrogen supply concerns. I don't know, Nicola, if you can give any information on that, but if you can't immediately, I appreciate a written update on that scheme.
I haven't got a huge amount of detail. I did attend some of the project board meetings with TfW in relation to the hydrogen bus corridor, and I think they potentially underestimated the investment they would have to make to ensure that the hydrogen was managed and transported safely, as well as ensuring all the complementary infrastructure was put in place. So it has been paused while they perhaps refer back to the financial implications and they develop further their project plan. I can get further detail for you, which we can circulate in writing from the relevant officers, because I'm only sort of involved on the edges rather than in the detail.
That's fine. Appreciate that high level update. And yeah, if that could be circulated, that'd be great. I know members have again looked at this previously. So, okay, I can't see any other indications from members. So that takes us to the end of this item. As it's just performance monitoring, so we note the report, and thanks officers for answering those questions. So we've now just got the forward work programme update, which I'm going to hand over to Tom to give a brief update on the forward work programme.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to keep this brief. So just to reference back to the site visit discussions that we had in pre-briefing. So we've identified with officers a date of March the 11th. I'm going to send an email out to you all just to sort of clarify that. We obviously appreciate it would be difficult to get everyone there, but if we can get a good number, I think that would be useful to proceed with. And that's just sort of discuss Margam Castle and sort of the extent of the project and options there. Just two updates to the forward work programmes. You may have seen in the pack the active travel delivery plan and the art strategy was still on there. Those have been taken away now. So just to give you an understanding of why. So the active travel delivery plan is a monitoring report due to sort of work prioritisation requirements for officers and with the agreement of the chair. That's going to get pushed back, and I understand the report will be pushed back as well for cabinet. So it will come. It's just it'll probably end up being in the new civic year. And then with the art strategy, officers have met with the Arts Council, and there's a bit more scope now to rethink timescales around finalising the art strategy. So I think the officers would like to take a report probably very early in the new cycle. So we're going to keep an eye on that, and we will look at it at that point. But it's just not something we can fit in this civic year.
Well, thanks, Tom. Yeah, just on the the active travel report. I spoke to officers on that one, and they're struggling with staff at the moment. I think we had a new member of staff that came and left. Yeah, so we've got a vacancy in the team. So understanding the pressure on staff there, I appreciated that prioritising that report wasn't really ideal. So that's just the reason for that delay. As usual, members, if you have any suggestions for the forward work programme, just contact myself or Tom. And we can get that discussed. So can't see any hands up, and I've got no urgent items. So that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you for your patience. I know we're 17 minutes over time, but it's been a very good discussion as usual. So I will see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Cheers.
Thanks all.